So when in 1995 the chaos report was published and people tried to get a feel on how how successful are the software development projects across the board, the results were terrifying. It was like about 80-90% of the projects in IT and software was not meeting its original goal. And then everyone started kind of looking into what's the problem there. I mean, how come the methodology that has helped in building successful roads and dams and buildings is not working in software? And along the way there were several developments that was done. There were improvements, enhancements in the existing methodologies, the waterfall process. However, there was a separate group which kind of picked up the manufacturing concepts of lean and tried applying the lean thinking into software development. So one of the key takeaway from that was incremental approach, a way to have quick turnaround to reach out to the end user sooner than later with incremental output and get their inputs, get their feedback, and incorporate that into the system. So this iterative methodology initially started with the process like extreme programming, etc. However, there were certain mismatch. There were like a certain uh, gap in the process where companies wanted to have some level of predictability, some level of control on when the features would be done, when a product can be released, etc. And one of the improvement, one of the adaptation was to use Scrum. So Scrum is a lean agile development methodology which takes in account incremental development. So what you see in front in the slide, there's a whole product which is segmented out in a logical way so that each part can be delivered separately, has value, and it can stand independent of each other, and then it's sorted out, as you see, from the highest valued feature to the user to the lower ones which is needed perhaps but not going to produce as much value. And then the sprints are basically a fixed length iteration in which at the end of the sprint there is a shippable increment, and once you go through this whole set of increments, at the end of the day the final product is produced. And throughout the process there is feedback, there is input from the users, and that ensures we reduce the risk along the way of producing something that does not serve the client's purpose, the user's purpose optimally. So in the following diagram we are looking at the methodology around Scrum. So at the leftmost we see a diagram representing the product owner who conceptualized the entire product, and working together with the team breaks it down into prioritized list of features, user stories, and continuously keep sizing it and prioritizing it throughout the process of development across the different sprints. So this is what basically you call product backlog and product backlog grooming. Now from the product backlog, every beginning of the sprint the team pulls a certain amount, a certain number of stories that they target to complete in that specific sprint. So each of those are further broken down into tasks, and measured in number of hours and then put up on the Scrum board and worked on day to day. Now, during this sprint, there is a daily meeting for which you call daily stand up or daily scrum, where the team stands in front of the board and updates each other on what has been done, what they are planning to do, and if there are any impediments that needs to be worked on. End of the sprint, there is a potentially shippable product increment, which is basically the output of that sprint, the total number of features that has been completed and can be considered done. This is generally reviewed on the demo together with the product owner on the sprint review, which is the second last activity on the Scrum, on the sprint. And after it has been delivered, the review has been done, the team meets on its own to do a retrospective to identify what has been successful, what can be done better, what improvements in the process or in the product that can be suggested for improving the overall goal of delivering value to the client. And these learnings are again put back to the process and if needed to the product backlog. So that's basically one iteration, and this continues on till the product has been completed. So that's basically the Scrum in a nutshell. Now let's move forward and look into each of the elements and does it what does it do. So the whole process can be broken down into three large chunks. So basically the roles of each participant, the artifacts that are created or are used during the Scrum, and events, the meetings that happens. So the main roles, of course, as you see, are the product owners, the development team, and the Scrum Master. And then the artifacts includes the product backlog, sprint backlog, release burn down charts, sprint burn down charts, product increments, and there are some other artifacts that are optional like um, poker planning cards, etc. Events or meetings are like sprint planning, daily scrum, sprint review, sprint retrospective, and of course the product backlog grooming meetings. Now let's go into the details on the different members, the different parties involved in a Scrum, and what's the relationship between each other. So if you see, in the center is the product owner, and it's one of the most important roles in the Scrum, and has a large extent affects the success or failure of a project. The product owner coordinates with the internal stakeholders as well as the probably the users or customers who are going to be the ultimate users or beneficiary of the system being built. Now, the product owner represents them, however, he also keeps them under control, so at a distance from the development team, because a lot of time there has been projects which are affected not very positively through too much influence and too much participations of too many stakeholders or members. So one of the key principles in Scrum is to provide independence and isolation to a self-managed team. So that's the development team. It's supposed to be a cross-functional self-managed team that focuses on each of this time box in delivering the optimum value in terms of product increment that can be shipped out. Now, the other key member, as you see, is a Scrum Master. A Scrum Master is someone who's like a referee. He's basically also protecting the team from the product owner and unnecessary influence of other stakeholders and managers and all. And there and his role also includes helping the Scrum team follow the few rules that are specific to Scrum, ensuring the process is being done correctly, and also as a gatekeeper of the entire process, and ensuring quality and all other factors are being looked at. His main job includes also help the team remove impediments, anything that's stopping them to perform optimally. This one is a representation of a product backlog stack, and basically you see it's defined in terms of feature. So like feature A, feature B, feature C, and each has defined size compared to each other. Now, what it shows also is a line which defines the desired feature completion for release 1. And once you add up all the sizes, all the story points, it comes out to a total of 200 story points. So in this particular example, there's a large enough product backlog. However, for release 1, it's identified feature A up to the feature X, Z, Y needs to be completed, and that equates to 200 story points. Now, the bar graph beside it shows that each sprint has been producing a different number of burn downs. So like the first one is roughly about 16 or 17, the second one reaches about 22, the third one hits about 20, and so forth. So what comes out of that is the team is on an average hitting about 20 points. It's about burning down 20 points per sprint, and applying this principle, it can be estimated that it will require about 10 sprints to complete the 200 points. And if the sprints are roughly about 2 week long, then it basically shows that it's going to take 20 weeks to finish this 200 points. And that this basically helps in planning out the release and having some level of certainty and managing expectations all around. So let's look at some of the terms of Scrum. Some of this are being picked up from everyday life items. So one of the important discussion that the team has every day during the daily stand-up is if there is any impediment. Now, what is an impediment? So impediment is anything that prevents the team from performing at its full potential. Now, so I mean, as you see in this example, two cyclists passing through a narrow lane has an impediment. So each time they try to pass each other, they have to kind of slow down and negotiate the path, and this is not the optimal flow. So in the process of development, this is also what happens at times because of certain process, bureaucracy, methods, etc. The team does not attain full potential, full velocity, and this is what is brought up, and the job of the Scrum Master is to help remove impediments to make it as smooth as possible. Of course, you must have heard me talk about sprint so many times by now. So what is a sprint? Sprint basically is it's a term meaning a length, a fixed time box in which the product development is done. So a certain number of feature is picked up, and then in a fixed period of time. So it varies from 1 week to 4 week. So in Scrum, there's no 8 or 10 or 1 year sprints. There's nothing like that. So the sprints are generally either 1 week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 4 weeks. Most of the time it's more of a 2 week sprints. Now the benefit, so that's basically a time box. So like within that period a certain set of feature is picked up and the team works on ensuring that it's delivered. Now what's the difference between, how do you choose whether to go for 1 week sprint or 2 weeks or longer? So most of the time the logic is around, of course, if you have very short sprints, it's expensive in terms of the amount of time spent in planning, in managing it. However, if you have a too long a sprint, then the challenge there is you have too much work done without the client reviewing it and giving you feedback. So that adds to the risk. So something in between, depending on how much risk, how much of changes that are anticipated in the project, the team decides what would be their ideal sprint duration. And once they decide on it, the team should try to stick to that throughout, or if required changes are made, then they stick on to that change duration. But it's not something you kind of change every other sprint or something like that. So to get that velocity, you need to keep the sprint duration uniform. So the whole process can be broken down into three large chunks. So basically the roles of each participant, the artifacts that are created or are used during the Scrum, and events, the meetings that happens. So the main roles, of course, as you see, are the product owners, the development team, and the Scrum Master. And then the artifacts includes the product backlog, sprint backlog, release burn down charts, sprint burn down charts, product increments, and there are some other artifacts that are optional, like um, poker planning cards, etc. Events or meetings are like sprint plan. Now, not all sprints necessarily runs for the whole period. There could be situation, change in the market, change in technology, certain risk, certain incident happens, and a sprint can be terminated halfway. So one point to remember in this is, when you don't touch the sprint and its stories when it's running. If it is too far off, it's better to terminate and then start another one. But you don't try to change the story in between, unless the team themselves get stuck on something and want to move one story out and pull in another one from the backlog. But if there are multiple changes, if if the priorities changes substantially, the best option is to terminate the sprint and then start another one. That basically brings us to the last slide on this. We are going to talk about some of the advantages of Scrum. So it's one of the, so extreme programming has been quite successful. However, it lacked a few key elements which companies needed. Scrum brings that in. It's a iterative incremental process. Of course, it values the most of the team-based approach, and it's most useful in developing system, especially if the market conditions are changing and if the dynamics are changing in the market, and or there's a lot of uncertainty. So let's say startups building products through experimenting on the market. uh, the Scrum and extreme programming comes very handy in that. It also helps in controlling the chaos of conflicting interest, improves communication and maximize cooperation within the team. A lot of time projects are less than optimal because the team members cannot get along well, but they're still required to continue on. And one of the other major challenges software development has seen over the years is too much interference from different stakeholders and power users while they are trying to complete work. Now that has been a major challenge in the progress, and in Scrum there is this time box and there is this isolation that is created so that team can focus and deliver optimal output. This is some of the reference material that has been used in this. Thank you very much.